Today in this episode of Behind the Build, we'll be covering some LEGO terminology, acronyms, colloquialisms, and other phrases that you may have seen across the LEGO community. This is part 2 of a multiple episode sub-series where we create a LEGO dictionary so that you have a full understanding of the right words to use, and so that you aren't left scratching your head on some words that people may have been saying to you in the past. In this episode, we focus on terms related to building and creating your own LEGO creations. Since this is part 2, be sure to watch part 1, as some of the terms like MOC and a few other things will be mentioned here, but not actually officially explained. Yet of course they are explained in detail over there. But if you've watched that already, let's start breaking down these terms together. The first term is Bley. In 2005, LEGO changed the colour of their grey pieces. The older pre-2005 colours are simply known as light grey or dark grey, while the post-2005 colours are known as light bluish grey or dark bluish grey. The term Bley is a mix of blue and grey, and is simply a shorter way of saying it. So for example, you could say that this piece is light bluish grey, or to shorten it, you could simply say that this piece is light Bley. The next term is BURP. BURP is an acronym for Big Ugly Rock Piece. This refers to this specific large rock piece. Of course, the fact that it is ugly is a little bit subjective. Other variations in size do exist for this piece, but most of them are just grouped under the term BURP. But terms like LURP and MURP also exist. LURP stands for Little Ugly Rock Piece, and this is referring to the more triangular looking piece, this one. And MURP stands for Mini Ugly Rock Piece, referring to this specific piece. But once again, these parts are very often just grouped under the single term BURP. And yes, many burping jokes are made. Feel free to join in on the fun. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you might say, I'd like to build some mountains in my diorama. I'm going to need to buy some burps. The next term is cheese slope. Cheese slope refers to a 1x1 slope piece that resembles a small triangle of cheese, and has actually in fact been used in some sets as a slice of cheese in the past. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you might say, now that I've sorted my collection, here is my drawer of cheese slopes. The next term is custom. Custom can have multiple meanings. It can refer to non-LEGO homemade parts made with non-LEGO elements, or it can refer to cutting or modifying LEGO pieces in some way, but this term can also include things like painting already existing LEGO pieces, or minifigures as well, and this can just achieve a unique or different look. Additionally, custom elements could also include the use of clay or glue or other elements. There are also pockets of the LEGO community that simply make custom minifigures by painting, moulding, or even applying custom non-LEGO decals or stickers onto pre-existing minifigures. But custom can also refer to 3D printing LEGO elements that either do or don't currently exist. And custom can also refer to companies like Brick Arms, Brick Forge, or even Brick Warrior, to name a few. And these companies specialize in making third-party custom armor, weapons, cloth, or minifigure accessories that are directly compatible with the current LEGO elements. Some of the more well-known companies have very high standards and very high quality as well. They even use similar plastics that the official LEGO company uses as well. Often these companies specialize in military-focused elements like guns. This is because the LEGO company's current morals and values disagree with having too much of a military focus in their LEGO sets. Of course, there are multiple ways to use it, but if you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I wish that LEGO would make minifigures for that new movie that just came out. Oh well, I'll have to make my own custom minifigures. Another important word to know is Bricklink. Bricklink is the world's largest online marketplace to buy and sell LEGO parts, minifigures, and sets, whether they're new or used. This is one of the most common places that people buy LEGO from for a pretty reasonable price. A counter term for Bricklink is Cracklink. This is a slang term that refers to the very addictive nature of ordering very cheap LEGO off of Bricklink. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I'm going to spend my birthday money buying pieces on Bricklink. Friction fit is the next term, and this refers to a technique where LEGO pieces are suspended but not actually physically connected. Sometimes builders can find that two pieces do actually connect, but not in the traditional sense of stud into anti-stud. So they connect, but not in a traditional sense, and they simply fit together through friction. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, to achieve this connection, you need to place these parts together with friction. It's a friction fit. Next up is Greebles. This is a term that is also used outside of the LEGO community. Greebles are fine detailing added to the surface of a larger object that makes it appear more complex, and therefore a little bit more visually interesting. It usually gives the audience an impression of increased scale. Greebles are typically common in space MOCs and mechs. You can also see it a lot in various Star Wars creations. Greebles can range from stickers or other sorts of mechanical looking details. One of the best examples of Greebles is the trench run in Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. That thing is filled with a bunch of Greebles. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, to give my spaceship a really unique look, I'm going to add Greebles on the underside. Up next is jumper. This is a term that refers to a 1x2 plate with a single stud on top. It's referred to as a jumper because the stud jumps from its original location. There are also other variations of jumpers, whether that's the 2x2 jumper or the 1x3 jumper as well. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, hey, hand me those jumpers, will you? I need them for my Lego creation. In conjunction with that term, the next one is half stud offset. This term refers to the offset created when using a jumper or other parts that cause a stud connection to jump. So the fact that this brick is slightly offset from the other one, that is a half stud offset. Using this term in a sentence, you might say, now that I've used a jumper here, I've created a half stud offset. The next term is illegal. Illegal building techniques are techniques that put too much stress on a part. This could include putting a lever into a minifigure hand, or maybe forcing clips into other pieces. This term has always been up for a little bit of debate. Some techniques put more stress on other pieces than certain other things may. And sometimes you do see people debating whether or not a part, technique, or a specific design is illegal or not. Lego designer Jamie Burand has made a document talking about what is and isn't considered legal. Personally, myself and others do disagree with some of these, but mainly it's down to if stress is being put on the piece in any way. This can be short-term stress or long-term stress. This is all brought to your attention so that parts won't break in future or even in the immediate future. This term is to some degree inspired by the Lego company, and this is so that pieces won't be damaged or broken on the toys that they sell. The majority of the time, official Lego sets have purely legal techniques and no illegal techniques. It is, however, incorrect to say that cut, painted, or modified pieces are an illegal technique. That's actually a different term known as non-purist, which we'll cover soon. Of course, the counter term to illegal techniques is legal techniques. This is using techniques that in no way put any stress on any Lego pieces. Like I said before, typically legal techniques are things that you see in Lego sets. Typical brick on brick, no stress is being put on anything. If you were to use these terms in a sentence, you might say, I like to live dangerously. I use illegal techniques on my creations. If it's illegal, it's cool. I'm not a big fan of using too many legal techniques. Following on from this point, the next term is purist. This term refers to Lego builders who exclusively build with official Lego branded pieces and nothing else. They don't like to use third-party company items like brick arms, and they don't like to cut, paint, or modify pieces. They simply use the pieces given to them by Lego. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you might say, sorry, I don't want to paint that piece. I'm a purist. The term can be used to describe someone or something. So for example, you could say, I'm a purist builder, or you could say this Lego creation is 100% purist. A counter term for purist is, of course, non-purist. This refers to someone who is more than happy to use pieces that aren't official Lego elements. This can include custom items like brick arms or brick forge products. It can even include painting, cutting, or modifying pieces, or even using items from other companies that aren't directly related to the Lego company. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, I like to paint and modify my pieces. I'm a non-purist. This term can be used to describe someone or something as well. So for example, you could say that I'm a non-purist builder, or you could say that this Lego creation is non-purist. It is important to note as well that to be a non-purist, you still can use many official Lego techniques that would be considered purist, but putting in anything like those third-party pieces or cutting or painting anything does make it non-purist. And of course, whether you're purist or non-purist, it doesn't matter. That's perfectly up to you. Any option is okay. It just comes down to personal preference. The next term is Rainbow Warrior. This is the name given to the random multicolored creations that many of us made when we were children. These creations used multicolored bricks due to limited amount of pieces or just simply not really worrying or focusing on any direct color scheme. Rainbow Warrior can also refer to using rainbow colored pieces to fill in the interior structures of larger builds. This is a great idea to do because you never see the inside. why waste all the pieces you still plan on using on areas that you'll never see? If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, hey, check out my new MOC. It's a bit of a rainbow warrior. The next term is SHIP. This is an acronym for one of two things. The first one is significantly huge investment of pieces, and the other option is significantly huge investment with pieces. The first term, significantly huge investment of pieces, refers to building a large spaceship over 100 studs long. These are often made every year in September for the community contest known as Shiptember, and this is where contestants have the month of September to build a very large spaceship that must be over 100 studs long. The acronym is of course a joke for how many pieces often go into these creations. The other and less commonly used meaning for this acronym, significantly huge investment with pieces, simply refers to buying a large and expensive number of pieces for a project or two. If you were to use these terms in a sentence, you could say, I'm going to build a ship for Shiptember. It will indeed be a ship. The next term is SNOT. This is an acronym for studs not on top. This is a term with a couple different meanings, and none of them are to do with boogers and sneezing, but feel free to make those jokes. The first refers to placing pieces so that the studs are facing sideways. This is often done with the use of bricks with studs on the sides, so brackets or several types of other bricks with studs on the side. Or it can refer to studs facing downwards, much like this technique. Any example of SNOT typically means that bricks are not placed in the traditional way of one on top of the other, stud onto anti-stud, but instead they are placed any other way so that the studs are, well, not on top. SNOT techniques allow for more advanced building designs and more interesting textures. For example, this brick wall is done through SNOT techniques, as the tiles are placed on their sides, so the studs are not on top. One important thing to note is that placing tiles directly onto studs on a MOC is not SNOT. While tiles have no studs on them, you are still placing one brick on top of the other, and thus, it's not a SNOT technique. However, it would be a SNOT technique to place the tiles on the side of the wall here on this brick wall texture. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, in order to achieve a more unique texture, I need to use some SNOT techniques. One of my favourite terms is swooshable. This term means that a builder is able to pick up a MOC and make swooshing noises with it and fly it around in their hands with ease. This term often refers to planes, helicopters, or spaceships. Something that is swooshable is a sturdy MOC that anyone could pick up and suddenly get the nerve to run around the room yelling and making spaceship noises. Swoosh, zoom, bam, pew, 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 pew. If a LEGO creation isn't swooshable, then it's likely fragile and a little bit difficult to move around. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, hey, check out my new X-Wing. It's totally swooshable. The next term is Vignette, or Vig for short. This term refers to a small scene or diorama made on a small base plate. There aren't really any size restrictions on what classifies something as being a vignette, but usually these MOCs are fairly small in their dimensions. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, I've made a new vignette. It features one of my favourite minifigures. A less commonly used term is Bignette. This refers to a much larger vignette, but nowadays I don't really see this term used all that much. People tend to simply substitute this word with diorama instead. But I figured it was worth mentioning since it is so closely related to the term vignette. But nowadays when people make very large MOCs on larger base plates, it's referred to as just a diorama. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I've recently finished my Bignette. Or if you were to use the more appropriate modern term, you could say, I've recently finished my diorama. Up next is WIP. This is an acronym for Work in Progress. This refers to any LEGO creation that you have started but have not yet finished. Whether you're still working on it, or it sits on your to-do list half finished for years, begging for you to finally complete it, it's a work in progress, or a WIP. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I'd love to start building this, but I better finish my current WIP first. The next term is NPU. This stands for Nice Part Use. It refers to using a LEGO piece in a unique way that it was not originally intended to be used in, but yet it still works so well that it seems as if it was designed to work for that distinct purpose. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, wow, you used a LEGO chicken for that? NPU, dude. Another less common term is MOTD. This stands for Mock of the Day. It was commonly used on the website MOC pages, and this referred to the large picture shown on the homepage of the website. And this picture would change daily and be a MOC that was picked at random to be featured. The term is rarely used outside of this website, but I figured I'd put it in here anyway because it's easily a term you could use on your local LEGO blog or your Facebook group, anything like that. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "Hey, congrats dude, your MOC is the MOTD today." Another term is part spam. This refers to using the same piece multiple times on a MOC. Often it can create strong visual unity and create a nice sense of flow throughout the design. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, "I love how you've part spammed those plates on this MOC. It looks really good." A variation on this term would be texture spam. This refers to using pieces on a MOC that have similar textures and repeating it throughout the design. Depending on the texture, you can communicate very different things with this technique. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, "I love how you texture spam those pieces on that MOC. It looks really good." Revamp is the next term, which refers to taking a LEGO set or a previous MOC and redoing it in some way. Whether that's just simply updating it with newer pieces, changing its style or its aesthetic, or completely reimagining it in some way. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could possibly say, "I really love that LEGO set, but I really want to revamp it." Mod refers to modifying a set or MOC in slight ways. This can be to fix slight problems or just to add some small details. The difference between a mod and a revamp is that a mod is only slight modifications, whereas a revamp is a total reimagining. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, "Check out my latest mod. I've added a couple things to this new set." Grill refers to the texture of this LEGO piece. The technical name for this part is tile modified 1x2 grill with bottom groove/lip. But of course that's a really long name and it's much nicer to just say grill. Some other LEGO elements have similar grill textures and they can be referred to with this word as well, but it typically means this piece. Of course the name also stems from how this piece does very much resemble a real-world grill. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "Hey, hand me those grill tiles please, I need them for my MOC." And that's it for now. In part 3, we'll be covering LEGO terminology that is more focused on the Bionicle community and the terms that better suit creating with that style of LEGO. If there's any terms you didn't see here and you want some more clarity on them, or even terms that I did feature and you're still not too sure on what they mean, let me know in the comments below and I'll add it in a future episode. Or I'll make sure to reply to your comment and give a little bit more insight into the term. But of course, since there will be multiple parts to this sub-series, here's a list of the terms that I'm still planning on featuring or I have previously featured. So stay tuned for the future episodes where I'll cover those, or go and watch the other parts of these episodes that are currently out now and review some of the other LEGO terminology. It's time to study up. Otherwise, that's it for this episode of Behind the Build. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.